Company or Front 43 on East Saginaw in Lansing.
Find Couch in the Rube podcasts on Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Google Podcasts, CastBox, and the Rube's favorite podcast addict.
Couch in the Rube, presented by Pure Options Precision Crafted Cannabis, and our Wednesday afternoon show brought to you by our friends at Front 43 Neighborhood Pub and Cask and Company Kitchen and Bar. Very pleased now to be joined by one of my favorite people to talk to around the Big Ten, Scott Dochterman from The Athletic, from the New York Times. If you go to his bio, I mean, you know, all this. I mean, it's very highbrow these days with Scott. Does a fantastic job covering the league and covering Iowa. Scott, how you doing, man?
I'm great, Graham. How are you?
I am good. I'm not there this year, and I'm kind of happy about it. So I don't. I'll stop saying that now. But my boss, I kept telling my bosses it was an overrated thing, and they finally listened. Although they listened on the year that there's 4 new teams, and there's probably a lot going on down there. Give me your what is the vibe there with the addition of the West Coast schools, and just how different is it?
You know, honestly, it's not really that different thus far. And granted, today is the first day that the 4 are here with USC and UCLA. They were just at the main podium, and then they'll be at the side podiums here in a little bit. So we'll get a little bit different feel. I did talk to UCLA AD for a while, and I guess the mood is similar. It's different being here in the at Lucas Oil Stadium versus when it was back in the old days. We can remember going to Chicago for that event. And, so, you know, it's kind of subdued, but overall, it's a well organized event this year, and having, 3 days instead of 2, it spreads things out a little bit nicer, but at the same time, it's still pretty convoluted.
It's interesting to hear Tony Petitti say they're focused on 18. Now, we've heard you're focused on whatever number they were at for years, right? My question is, how much do you believe that there is a settling of things? Like, how long is this what the league is, do you think?
That's a great question, because I'm trying to figure that out for myself. And I think there are some trigger factors that could change that dramatically, meaning if North Carolina suddenly became available, or if Notre Dame says, hey, we're interested, then I think then that number changes from 18 to whatever it is very, very quickly. But I also think that they are fairly satisfied, because I know that, from every aspect, not just sports, trying to integrate those 4 schools into the Big Ten was quite the situation for all of them to try to figure out, and then the logistics of travel and stuff. So they're not really anxious to try to add more schools to that plate. But I think if they had the opportunity to grab, like I said, a North Carolina or a Notre Dame, if they became available and were interested, then I think that they would move very, very quickly on that. But all eyes are on the ACC right now. There's some unhappy members. You don't know how long that's going to last. There's a court case. If things break up quickly, I think they're positioned to make a jump. But at this point, I think 18 is probably, for the short term, the number we're looking at.
One of the things that Iowa to me is a program with that's had a brand and similar to Michigan State, right? People look at the ceiling similar to what Michigan State's ceiling might be. Now, Iowa's been in a better place now for a little while, but if you are an Iowa or Michigan State and you see Oregon coming in, Ohio State's not going anywhere, Michigan's risen up. If USC finds itself, like the whole idea of success and changes, and the ability to win the Big Ten may get more difficult. The playoff expands, so there's getting into that top 12 is really what probably matters to a greater degree. And I'm just wondering, from the sort of Michigan State Iowa level perspective, where in some ways there's more talent in the league. The flip side is you don't play Ohio State every year. That's an every other year problem. You don't play Oregon every year. You don't what is the vibe there in Iowa about the opportunities that have been there for Iowa football for years? Are they still there? Or is there excitement? Is there dread? What is it?
I think there's overall excitement, but I think there's also a thought of reality. I mean, it's been interesting for those two programs in particular, as you said, with Michigan State at the front end of the divisional alignment, especially geographical, was as good as any program in the Big Ten. I mean, multiple years, had been in the title game, had won the championship, and twice in a 3-year period, and was superior to Michigan in that era. And I think they're more than capable of reaching that level. I think Iowa is in the same boat, where Iowa can be a very, very competitive program year in and year out for the upper third of the league, and then on years where maybe everything works out, be in that same driver's seat. And I'd also think that the schedule does matter when a year. I know like Iowa has its certain rivalries, and Michigan State plays Michigan every year. But outside of those, you're gonna recycle everybody on your schedule. So yeah, you might not be playing an Ohio State or an Oregon. Like this year with Iowa, when you bring back that defense, and you hope that the offense isn't as nearly as bad as it was last year. If not, you can say a lot more adjectives. But this year they don't play Michigan, they don't play Oregon, they don't play USC, they don't play Penn State. I mean, they play at Ohio State, but the rest of their schedule you can look at and say is fairly manageable. And if Iowa could go, upside of an 11-1 season, lose it in Columbus, that's a playoff team. And I think the goal of the teams, I think in that middle, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, if it ever kind of gets off the mat, and a few others, I think that's really the what you can shoot for is get to the playoff, win a game, maybe win 2. I think that's really what you shoot for, because national title is going to be pretty unrealistic, I think, for any of those teams.
Yeah, if you're ever going to get to that next step, you need to get to the playoff step first. That needs to become a thing you're knocking on. And look, I agree. I think 10-2 in the Big Ten, this will get you to the playoff forever. And now with 12 teams and then 14 teams, like 10-2 is what you need. And Iowa is, I heard Phil Steele say this, and then so I started looking at their schedule, and he's right. I mean, there's probably one game they're not at least a slight favorite in all year long, and so the idea their over/under wins is I got it. You saw it 7.5 at one point. Now it's like 8, pretty flat, but 8 still pretty good. The idea that Tim Lester takes over as the OC, different energy there. You get your quarterback back, and it's like the defense returns a lot of guys. That should be a team that's knocking on the playoff door this year, correct?
It should be, and I've seen these years before in the past, not so much recently, but where they look like they could be in an 11-1 or 10-2 team, and then in the same breath, they could lose a lot of close games and be 7-5. I think they play that style of football that's really where it comes down to the fourth quarter, and if you make the plays or not. And last year was a great year for them, even with that horrific offense. They were able to win those close games. I mean, with incredible plays like Cooper DeJean returning a punt 70 yards for a touchdown with 3 minutes to go, or intercepting a pass from Nebraska in a tie game with 15 seconds to go and kick the game-winning field goal, and 2 plays later, they were able to make those plays happen. And sometimes they balance out. But I do think that with this schedule, with this team, if they stay relatively healthy, I think they have every opportunity to go ahead and be in that playoff contention. And if you can get a home game for a playoff, I mean, I think it would be instantly become the biggest game in Kinnick Stadium history. If it's, say, Iowa's number 7 and they're hosting number 10 Ole Miss in the middle of December, it's a different vibe than any other game we've ever seen. And I think that's the same thing that's going to happen for all these other teams. Regular season games are great, no question, but a playoff game with, I think that just changes the dynamic exponentially.
Yeah, no, playoff game, Spartan Stadium, anywhere would have that. Yeah, it would be legendary unless it went horribly. But it has the potential to be legendary. And the Iowa game in East Lansing, and I fear this for MSU fans, and for MSU a little bit, is it comes in the middle of a stretch where Michigan State is playing Ohio State, at Oregon, Iowa, and at Michigan. And people kind of look at the Iowa game as the chance there based on what happened last year. I don't. I mean, I know it's in East Lansing. I think Iowa is going to be a more seasoned club. I would be surprised if that goes that way. You mentioned to me that you're going to be talking to Jonathan Smith here in a little bit, and sort of perhaps writing on Michigan State for The Athletic. And I'm wondering what you're interested to hear about him.
I'm fascinated by Michigan State. First of all, the insane numbers that hit the portal. I mean, in the 40s, and that's almost unattainable. How do you rebuild a program as quickly as you can? Because some of those players did go on to really big institutions, and I'm interested to see how quickly he thinks he can rebuild Michigan State. And you're doing it, as you said, on the fly. I mean, you've got a short trip to. I think they're playing Ohio State and then Oregon like 6 days later, and then you're playing Iowa and Michigan, back to back. That's insane to try to figure out a path to be competitive. And those are the types of stretches where you can get guys hurt, demoralized, and really sink your season. How do you maintain a positive feel? But also some of the players he brought. I think I'm really interested in that, and some of the other coaches that are here, Kirk Cignetti in Indiana, and Jed Fish at Washington, left from Arizona. How do they? They brought all these players with them. How did that process work? I think Michigan State, with Aiden Childs and Jack Velling could be, could be two of the best players on their team automatically, and just how that process worked, and I think just overall in the big picture, what would constitute progress in a year where you've had just so much turmoil.
Scott, I appreciate you taking a few minutes. I'll let you go to talk to Jonathan Smith here, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Okay, sounds good, Graham. Thanks so much.
That's Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. Does an awesome job covering the Big Ten and, of course, Iowa. And we'll talk to him, I'm sure, before Iowa plays Michigan State down the road.
Scott was like, is Graham in Indianapolis? And I was like, no, he's here in Lansing. He's like, oh, okay. Wouldn't that be funny, though, if you made him call into your show?
Yeah. Instead of
if you were there.
Yeah, he was probably, looking for me on Radio Row. Where yeah.
No, Scott, we need you on the phone. Sorry.
Yeah, no, call in.
By the way, I can't find a number under 8.5 now for Iowa.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think I'll double check what they have at the Firekeepers iCasino Sportsbook at DraftKings. I think has 8.
Okay.
So if you're out there still, that is you start getting 8.5, it gets a little nerve-wracking just because Iowa does tend to play close games. The 8 I just think is a slam dunk because to me, worst case scenario, they have a season where they have a couple disappointing losses, and it's a push. You get your money back at 8. Right. To me, that's worst case, unless there's huge injuries and they got a better backup quarterback. I think that is.
They have to go on the road to Ohio State, obviously the week before, Minnesota on the road, but other than that, really their schedule kind of lines up for them.
Yeah, no,
to at least hit that win total anyway.
Yeah, no, their schedule is peachy, and we're gonna peachy. Did I say peachy? Say fix that post.
Peachy keen.
Yeah, we'll dig in here now and into our sort of first look favorite over under bets, and we'll do this with Harry as we get closer to college football and the NFL season as well. There are 18 freaking teams now, so there's a lot of teams to look at and sort of have a sense of. But as you are considering your college football Saturday, especially road games for Michigan State, anytime you don't have tickets or you just want the full college football Saturday experience with a lot of games, I'm telling you right now, Cask & Company in Front 43, just north of Frandor near the Lansing-East Lansing border, outstanding place. Outstanding. Michigan State's playing at night or playing later. You want to go for lunch, you're really close to East Lansing. Just great TV setup in both situations. A little more date-style restaurant-y for Cask & Company, although a terrific bar set up there too as well. And then Front 43, the pub-style, great television setup. Just unbelievable place to watch sports. That's why they became a sponsor. I was sitting there in 2018 on Michigan State's bye, throwing back terrific beers, amazing beers on tap with Matt Mencarini, who I mentioned a lot on this show. And I was like, this place fits us. This is as good as it gets. And Front 43 and Cask & Company is very much that. Okay, Jason, give me your favorite over-under, or should we just run through you want me to run through the 18?
Should we start at USC? Because USC okay. I have the most questions about because they do pop up in a lot of schedules, right? And are they going to be good? The defense is going to be complete ass? Everybody's down on Lincoln Riley again, so I don't. You know what I mean? 7.5 is the number there.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to touch it. What I'm wondering is are they going to be a team that could mess up somebody and these other teams over-unders?
You can get USC at 7 some places right now. And so I would hunt around and get 7 if you're thinking about the over. Because The thing about USC though is the schedule is not easy. They open with LSU, so you got immediately best case scenario. Is a toss up, right? Then they've got early games in September at Michigan, home against Wisconsin. Then they've got to go back out east the next week after Wisconsin to Minnesota. Then they host Penn State. They go to Maryland. They've got a game at Washington. I don't know how good they're going to be. Nebraska, rivalry UCLA, and then they host Notre Dame. I think their schedule, as much as how they're going to be, is the reason to be nervous about them. If you were considering an over, I wouldn't take an under because it's USC, and they may be ornery about being picked low, and they may have a team. But if you were thinking about an over, make sure you get it at 7 because I do think there's the potential for. Because,
like I said, in my mind, when I go over these schedules, you see USC and you automatically think of, that's going to be a tough game. But this team, who knows what's going to know? Caleb Williams, the defense last year was so bad. So I'm definitely not going to bet them. But it's just something to keep in your mind when you're going over these schedules. Obviously, you and I lockstep with the Iowa thing. When I was going over them yesterday, I was like, man. This is pretty, Cade McNamara coming back, no Brian Ferentz. I mean, it has to be, the offense has to be better. And you know that Kirk Ferentz is going to have a great defense. And that's really the big key to these things, right? So I just think get your money in now because it's just going to go up, I believe.
The other LA school, and you see it at 5, so you go, and I think that's probably right. Like UCLA, I'd like the under on UCLA a little bit. I think they're going to have a rough year. I know they lose their coach, who I think thought he was going to have a team that got him fired. Early on, they've got a game at Hawaii, then a bye. Like, Hawaii's not usually very good, but it's on the islands. You never know. They've got LSU on September 21st. I don't know why that game got scheduled by both LA schools. Oregon, September 28th, and then at Penn State. That's a 3-week stretch, right? That could go in 3. They've got a late October trip to Rutgers is going to be solid, and Piscataway. You can just see that not going well for UCLA. They've got a game 2 weeks after that. They do have a bye at Nebraska, who I would take over them. They got Iowa on the schedule. They got a game at Washington, a rivalry game USC, and then somebody scheduled a game on November 30th against Fresno State, who I think is going to be solid this year as well. Like, I don't think they're going to get to 6 wins. I don't, UCLA. So again, if you get it at 5, you may push, but I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all.
Well, speaking of other kind of teams that you're looking to be kind of asked this year, Wisconsin and their schedule, right? Like Luke Fickell, I trust him as a head coach. I think he's going to do great things at Wisconsin. I just think this year is going to be really, really tough on them. Their quarterback situation, the Van Dyke's coming back, but they got other transfers coming in. You just don't know. I just think, Bama at home, USC on the road, and then at Iowa, it just seems like that's going to be, and it's at 6 and a hook right now. I'm not a big fan of taking unders, but I think that's a good under to take.
Yeah, I think Wisconsin, they're just a very different program brand-wise than they've got, Western early, South Dakota, so they should be 2-0. But, yeah, you get Bama at USC, at Rutgers. Rutgers is going to be one of those teams that I think they're going to be solid, and they've got some home games that could determine some other stuff. At Iowa, Penn State, Oregon, they host both those schools, and then at Nebraska to close things out. I wouldn't touch Wisconsin either way. And actually, they have Minnesota. I don't think it's going to be that good. 6.5 feels like a number that the number I kind of like though is I kind of like Michigan under 9, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason the over 9 is you're getting plus money at this point, plus 115 most places, and people go, oh wow, that seems like great value. But just think about Michigan's football schedule for a minute. And again, they may have enough built into that program to be okay. But you get a coaching change. You're coming off a national championship. They get a Fresno State team that is more difficult than any of the patsies they've been playing in previous years to start out. That's in the opener, right? Then they get Texas at home, who, again, it's home, but Texas thinks they're playing for an SEC title. That's going to be I think Texas is going to be a better team than Michigan this year, a little more upside offensively. They got a game against USC early on. They got a trip to Washington, which is a tricky place to play, even if Washington's down a little. They got the rivalry game with MSU up. Obviously, they got Oregon at home, and then they ended Ohio State. Ohio State team that's just been waiting to beat these guys and to have more talent. Like, so what I'm saying is I think Michigan's going to lose at least 3 this year. There's no shitting on the program long term or anything like that. They just won a national title. No shame in 9-3 this year. But I just find it hard to believe between Fresno State, Texas, Washington on the road, Oregon, and Ohio State that they don't drop 3. And maybe there's and so you don't lose your money if they lose 3. So at that point, do they drop 4? I could see that happening. In other words, I think it's a pretty good bet to at least push. And then if they get to 8-4, you win it. And
should you wait at all? And it's plus 115 now. Do you think it goes up or it goes back to minus money?
It's been moving toward the under a little bit. So I would not wait if you want the under.
Because Michigan usually gets the preseason hype and all that, and usually it inflates odds, especially for Michigan because they're heavily bet in Vegas. So I just didn't know if you want to wait. Because I'm with you. I think that Sharon Moore, I don't believe in it. I just think that whole thing ran with Jim Harbaugh. And when Moore took over for those 3 games, and he got all those accolades for winning 3 games, but
I don't know if I don't believe in Moore or not. I just think that if Jim Harbaugh was the coach, I might not be as inclined to take the under. But with that schedule, losing what they lost, I know they've got a lot of guys in the program.
If Harbaugh was the coach, you better get me plus 130, 135 then.
Yeah,
for the under on that.
For the under,
I think that's honestly. I'm not saying it switches the whole season because of Harbaugh, but I think that definitely in this, the over under 9.5, definitely.
The other team that I really like, Jason, is the Minnesota under 5.5. Now I know they're, you're at a point where they've had some good years. They're more seasoned.
See, I had it at 4.5.
Did you really? No,
yeah.
It's pretty much 5.5 now. Okay. Most places I've seen it. And they lose Rossi to Michigan State, the defensive coordinator. That's usually a sign. The guy jumped ship, looking for a fresh start. Not like Michigan State's rolling in it, but a guy. It's not that he did not. I think Rossi wants to be a head coach, right? And he did not see Minnesota rising to a situation where he would be considered from that job to a head coaching position. He wanted to start over with Jonathan Smith. Good sign for Jonathan Smith. Not a great sign for what's going on with PJ Fleck. I sense with Fleck that it's probably about run its course there. Like the ceiling that they're going to have. I don't know what the NIL situation is there with them. So they host North Carolina to start the season. That's a home game. Nevada's going through. I don't know how good Nevada's going to be, but they have in September. Late September they have Iowa. Then they have a trip to Michigan, which I just said I think Michigan would struggle, but not that much. They host USC. Then they go out to L.A., to UCLA, host Maryland, and these are all toss-ups here. Go to Illinois, like at Rutgers, and then they finish the season. Penn State coming to them, and at Wisconsin. Like I see 7 losses there. I really like. And again, something could be different than but I think Minnesota is going to see a downturn this year. That's where I'm at.
What do you think happens to Fleck, though, if they have a season like that? You think
I don't think he's gone after this year or anything, but or maybe he, maybe he does what a Richard Pitino does and go finds another program ahead of time. One of PJ Fleck's challenges, and I'm not shitting on PJ Fleck here. He walked into a Western Michigan and did exactly what he said he was going to do in the year he said he was going to do it. In 4 years, he went like unbeaten, got to the Cotton Bowl, and put a competitive team together. They were amazing. He recruited at that level at an unbelievable. I mean, he did what I never thought could be done there. And in Minnesota, I think it generated some. Again, these guys who are great salespeople, though, more than they are ball coaches, in an NIL era, I don't know if that's the way. The other problem for PJ Fleck, he took over Western Michigan at 31 years old. So you got a lot of football coach life ahead of you. And the question is, can you find a place where you can string it together? I think he's going to have to make.
What's their NIL budget, though?
It's not good in basketball. I don't know what it is in football.
Right. So what would you need? What'd you say? 15 mil you need to try to go for a national championship. But Minnesota, right? You probably need to have a winning season. 8 mil a year in NIL or what?
Yeah, 10, 11, I would think. Yeah. I mean, that's where you got to be.
I don't think Minnesota would fire the guy because I just don't know who they would go out and get that would be.
I don't think so yet.
Would give them kind of a future. Another one I like is Nebraska.
You like at 7.5?
7.5. Hopefully that's still the number. I don't know if you've seen anything else. Matt Rule. I just trust Matt Rule.
Good coach.
I think he's a great football coach. Dominic Raiola's kid is the freshman quarterback for them. I just think like 5 out of their first 6 games are at home.
Yeah.
With the sole road game is Purdue on September 28th. So I just think you can get off to a good start at 7.5.
Nebraska has, other than Iowa, Nebraska might have the best schedule in the Big Ten. Host UTEP, host Colorado, host Northern Iowa, then host Illinois. They're not leaving state until they go to Purdue, which is slated to be the worst team in the Big Ten, some people think, on September 28th for Week 5. Then they host Rutgers. Again, I think Rutgers is a decent program at this point, but home game. I mean, there's a chance they could drop one, but there's a chance they're 6-0. Then they go to Indiana, and then the real tough game is at Nebraska. So what? We're not talking about them going undefeated. Host UCLA. We just talked about them not being very good. Then they go to USC. Tough road trip. Could absolutely lose that game. Host Wisconsin. Total toss-up at Iowa. You could see, how they get to 4 losses, but we're talking, and they could win some of those games too. But at 7.5, you're right. I do like that freshman quarterback thing. If that's what winds up happening there, it makes me a little nervous. But Matt Rule, I trust. You're right. I think he's a great.
And Raiola is one of the top QBs, right? The recruits or whatever. But yeah, that game at Iowa at the end of the year is going to be a night game. So night games at Kinnick are.
And the ideal situation is you don't need either one of those teams to win to get the over/under. That you've got Nebraska and Iowa, and you're sitting back on November 29th, 7:30 p.m. at Kinnick, going, I just cashed 2 tickets.
Sparking
already.
A joint. Yep.
It's pure options out. Got your takeout from Front 43 and Cask Company. Maybe you're at Front 43 and Cask and Company that night, and enjoying Nebraska Iowa football instead of your family on Thanksgiving weekend, which is a better way to go.
It's the best way to do it. What's the Rutgers number? Apparently I missed their over/under season total.
It was it's 6. I see most places, and Rutgers is. I'm not taking Rutgers. They just have so many games though that will dictate other teams over and unders this year.
Right.
And I'm slow to trust it. I
start betting against yourself.
Yeah, I could just see the Rutgers over/under being a total disaster for me. And lastly, MSU, like it's at 5. It's almost even money at 5, and I really like it for people.
I saw -4.5 at -152.
If you get it, I would take the juice on that because, obviously, if something goes wrong, they lose to Florida Atlantic out of the gate, then
burn the ticket.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. Mayday. But. Maryland, a team that on the road early in the season is probably a more seasoned program than them, but it's not an automatic loss. Prairie View is an automatic win. I mean, Jason could start at center, I could start at quarterback, and Michigan State is going to beat Prairie View. They just are. That's.
I'm willing to do that. By the way, I'll suit up.
Okay, well there you go. So
I'll start practicing my hiking.
I wouldn't take the spread if Jason suits up, but I would. They're going to win the game. But so if they're going to win 2 games. If they beat Florida Atlantic, they beat Prairie View. They've got 2 wins going into Boston College. Now, you can see where things go rough. Boston College is supposed to be about like Michigan State is this year. Might be even, we'll see what they are. That's not a gimme. I think that's a 50-50 proposition. I think there'll be a lot of Michigan State fans there in the stands. And you hit a gauntlet in which you have to maintain health and some measure of confidence. There's a bye in there, but you get Ohio State, 6 days later at Oregon, a bye week, and then Iowa, which is a tough team, but not a team that's going to run away from you, I don't think, embarrassingly at home, especially off a bye. And then at Michigan, Michigan will not be last year's Michigan. I think Michigan State will do everything it can to keep that competitive. But there's a really good chance that's an 0-4 stretch. That's why that Boston College game is important. If you get out of that first 4 stretch, either beating Maryland or Boston College, and you're at 3 wins, you're in great shape. But say you're at 2 wins. That's where you're going to get out of it. You get to November, and you've got Indiana, Illinois, Purdue, Rutgers. And, again, we talk about Rutgers. Like, it could come down to that final game, them needing to win to get to 5. I think it's more likely they're at 5 wins playing Rutgers in the final game of the season. And depending on what Rutgers is, it's a home game at Spartan Stadium. Who knows? But that you've already, if you get the line at 5, you've already pushed. It's basically, and maybe that's a pick 'em and you just want to wait to bet that game. And maybe that's where the value is. I think there's more value on the over for Michigan State than the under.
Football's back.
It's fun.
Can't wait. It's another month. We're doing we have to do a mega pod of all these preseason over-unders and everything, right?
We'll do something with Harry in August where we go through we'll do a college football week. We'll do an NFL, throughout The Nation will do an NFL week. The NFL stuff, it's amazing. Training camp is here.
Dan Campbell is sitting at a giant podium.
Yeah, it's
that Meyer made him stand on.
It's going to be, you just got a few weeks of just edibles at Pure Options and trying
baseball
to get through
betting.
Baseball betting.
Yeah.
Speaking of baseball, you were something. That's my transition. How'd I do?
I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of impressive until you had to stop the show to tell everybody how great it was.
Yeah, sorry. You fired off a text last night about
Paul
something.
Skeens, dude.
What a weird situation.
Yeah, in the game yesterday, like we talked about, I think it was a week or two ago, Skeens, they pulled him when he was dominating against, I forget, with Nationals or something like that.
No-hitter going.
It had a no-hitter going, and they pulled him in the seventh. So I'm watching the game last night, and they let Skeens go deep into the eighth because, honestly, I have two TVs. So I'm like, if you see something that's going on, I want to watch Skeens. Why not? So you put it on the second TV, and I'm watching it, and they're in a tight game where they're winning 1-0, or I think it was 1-0, and he's pitching deep into the eighth inning. And I'm going like, wait a minute. Like, anyway, so the whole point of it is he ends up losing. I believe they lose the game 2-1, and then they pull Skeens in the top of the ninth and 1/3 or 2/3, something like that. But I'm just going, well, wait a minute. So you leave him in there where he gets the loss, where it's going to maybe, I don't think you can ruin that guy's mentality right now. But you know what I mean? But when he's dominating, no one was hitting him in that game I watched when he could have had a no-hitter as well. So I just don't understand baseball sometimes. I know there's the numbers and all that shit, but what are we doing?
It's bizarre that they would, after that situation where they pulled him when he had a chance for a no-hitter. Like, to me, once you do that, and you're going to face some criticism, but you stick to your guns and you just always pull him after the seventh or at that pitch count and that sort of deal at that point.
Maybe seventh, let him go into the eighth, but they let him go into the ninth, and I'm just like, okay. And then he ends up giving up a run to go down 2-1, and I'm like, what are we doing here? And then Pittsburgh fans, I'm watching them in the stands wearing Skeens jerseys, and I'm like, is that the worst investment you could possibly have? Because he's going to be on the Yankees in no time. Whatever his contract is, right? The Yankees are going to come.
He's got years. He's got years. He's got like 5.
Yeah, because that's
45 years.
Garrett Cole had years and years as well. Yeah. It's just, I feel bad for Pittsburgh Pirates fans, but because we have bad owners as well, so I understand.
Well, at least Detroit's a bigger market. There's no excuse for what's happening.
Yeah, but those fans are passionate. They will fill that stadium. Pittsburgh Pirate fans are passionate, so why not give them a team worth watching in October? It's so dumb.
Should not be trading him, and I don't think they will. I don't know what his situation. I'm sure he's got 4 or 5 years of team control left, though. I would be stunned if that moved.
And by the way, Scooball, did you see some of the offers? John Morosi, I think, tweeted out there. It was Jackson Holiday and Heston Kerr, whatever his last name is, dyslexic people's worst nightmare.
For the Orioles.
The Orioles, yes, thank you. For Scooball and Foley. And I'm like,
is he reporting that or is he suggesting it?
It's a tweet. I don't know, whatever. You can't believe anything. But I just saw it. I'm like, that's not enough.
Hold on. Is that it? Hold on. Give me some Hoff real quick.
I would find it hard to believe that's a real Hoff.
Free Ubers.
All right, because I know Morosi pretty well.
Come on.
Name dropper.
Yeah. We could have Morosi on some point. Morosi used to cover. He was the Free Press beat writer for the Tigers when I was the backup beat writer for Booth, filling in that summer of 2008.
We could talk Blue Wall with him as well.
Yeah, we could get in all of it.
Blue Wall, Connor Stallions. Yeah.
No, okay, I see what this is. This is what somebody thinks the Orioles would have to do to get in the Tarek Skubal conversation. So it's a hypothetical. And you're right.
It doesn't get you in the conversation. I would hang up if I heard that.
Yeah, but it starts with Jackson Holiday, though. I think.
Sure.
I think it starts there, too.
But he's an unknown commodity, whereas Skubal, he's a known commodity and one of the best pitchers in baseball. So you got to give me more than that. I'm excited about Jackson Holiday. Heston, he's 25 years old, so you want younger guys. So
without Holiday, the phone gets hung up. That if you're the Orioles, well, we will be back Friday with your Groovy Donut Twitter questions. Quickly, watched a little Moneyball last night, and watched Jackson Kohler put up 58.
What?
I don't remember. I saw only
stop the show then. All right, 58 points for Kohler last night?
Yeah, 58 points.
Why didn't we lead with this?
Well, we had to get to Matt Wenzel. But I do think it was interesting because he was playing against Xavier Booker. And the part of the game that I saw, I was there to do an interview on a different somebody else, and local guy who's still playing is 53 years old, and is a story for next week. But he it wasn't like it was. He looked tired by the point that I was there. It was later in the game. Looked like all those guys that had a leg day at Michigan State. Sometimes they do like heavy leg workouts and weightlifting, and then they show up to Moneyball, and you can just tell like their shots are short. Like it looked like that for a number of guys. I was like, this must have been a heavy lifting day, and then Moneyball. But and then I got to see a couple times that Booker guarded him well. Like you watch it, and I'm very curious to watch Kohler play against guys and score against guys who have length and size, and can he do it consistently? Like I don't know. I am as much on the Jackson Kohler train as anybody. I think people know that. I'm curious about what he can bring to Michigan State. I like that style of player. I like him personally. But I saw Booker give him some issues too, and I do wonder, like Booker at the 5, if he can be that guy who causes problems still. And but 58 points is a lot, and it's Moneyball, and it's not, Nick Ward scored 50. Lots of guys have scored 50, but Nick Ward is also a pretty good offensive player, and it's time to can Jackson Kohler be a 8-10 point a game guy for Michigan State? Can he have some games where he's a real mismatch problem for somebody, or they have to really think about him, and it opens things up for other guys? It will be interesting to watch. We'll do Groovy Donut Twitter questions on Friday. We appreciate Front 43 and Cask and Company. Again, remember, mark your calendars, their anniversary, August 9th and 10th, 6 to 11 p.m. And we thank Pure Options. It makes the show possible, makes listening to the show bearable, frankly. So pureoptions.com for the location nearest you. Good show, man.
Yeah, man.
Couch in the Roof.